All right, so welcome everyone to Global Purpose Speaks. I'm your host, DJ Taz Rashid, and I'm a musician who travels to mindful festivals and events all around the world. And one of my passions is to have conversations with transformational leaders, learn about their unique missions and how they are changing the world. So this talk series is created in partnership with Global Purpose Movement, which is a collective of change makers convening and co-creating in our Earth's current shift towards a world that really works for everyone. So today we're chatting with Suzanne Sterling, who I recently ran into at Bali Spirit Festival in Bali, Indonesia. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
And Suzanne's a dedicated musician, yogi, activist, social innovator she's been performing and teaching in all kinds of transformational workshops past 2 decades. Also, she's the founder of Voice of Change, co-founder of Off the Mat into the World, and director of the Global Seva Challenge. She's won awards as a musician, released 5 solo albums and many DVD soundtracks. But her main life work is dedicated to really inspiring others to find their unique voice and to use self-expression as a tool for community building and conscious evolution. Enjoy the conversation. Hello, Susan. How are you, Suzanne?
I'm well.
Okay.
I'm well. Thank you.
Very cool. Well, I want to get straight into it. These are short conversations. And first of all, I want to find out, it's always great to see you at festivals and share the stage with you. And what brings, you've been in the festival scene for the last, few decades, as you mentioned, as performer, dancer, community holder. But what brings you out to events like Bali Spirit Festival? What keeps bringing you back to that scene?
To the festival scene?
Yeah.
Well, partially, I've seen a lot of shifts due to that festival scene.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it was all music festivals. Slowly, over the last 20 years, it's become more music and transformational processes. And even though you get a short immersion at a festival in a festival situation, not a long-term developmental immersion in transformational practices, you do get like a lot of seeds have been planted, environmental seeds, permaculture seeds, seeds around how to build ritual and community for evolution, for sustainability, seeds around sacred activism, seeds around how do the artists become activists, how do we have a sustainable long-term picture for some of these practices, how do we allow them to find their way out into our daily lives and in the other parts of our culture. So that's kind of what keeps me going back. I think I'm seeing people really integrate some of the teachings. I'm seeing people want to go deeper with them. Mm-hmm. It's always fun to have fun,
of course.
Play, but I think that's not the main thing that's going on there anymore. It's part of it. But if you just go beneath the surface, it's like we're creating new forms of culture. We're evolving culture forward. We're starting to learn how to be conscious consumers. We're learning how to articulate some of these transformational practices that we have the privilege to have access to. And what the best thing and the most activating thing for me is that we're now starting to learn how to take these practices out to others and these resources out to others who wouldn't have access to them. Yeah. To me, that's the greatest activism, right? Getting transformational practices, healing practices, embodiment practices, and even access to physical resources, food, water, shelter, to people who don't have access to that. That's part of our responsibility, I think, as people who have had the privilege of doing this work.
You mentioned the word sacred activism. I love that, just like the concept of that. And I've been hearing about it I've been hearing those two words together in the past few years. But for those, in our audience who doesn't exactly know what to make of that, what is your definition of sacred activism, and if you could give us some examples that you've done and you're actually seeing that people would know about in the world, like what is that exactly?
Well, this is part and parcel of our work with Off the Mat into the World is redefining what that means, and to me, sacred activism is serving the suffering of the world in a sacred context. So that begins with taking responsibility for our motivations for wanting to serve, like really checking it out. Is this a healthy motivation? Is it coming from my cup is full, as opposed to I'm going to go out and do some service work in the world because it's going to make me feel better about myself? Actually doing the work, looking at our own wounds and healing them to a certain extent so that we can go out into the world and really, from a space of compassion, serve suffering, not from a place of, sympathy. Yeah. And the next piece in that is getting really, really educated about the connectivity of the world. That is to say, the connectivity in a beautiful way, like we are actually all on this small planet together. The planet is in crisis. Let's all come together to do something about it. We have a lot of resources as a community, but then also the connectivity that is like, uh, when one part of the world is suffering, we're kind of all suffering in that way, right? And so the sacred context is about being aware of, well, how do my choices affect everyone else in the world? My economic choices, particularly, right? Where am I complicit in some of the greatest suffering? I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm the director of our Seva Challenge, which means for many years we've been getting the yoga community to raise funds and then bringing people on a trip to work on the projects that we've raised money for. We've raised $4 million. We've been all over the world. We've done amazing projects. And
Wow, that's amazing.
and we've taken a lot of people, and we've done a lot of awareness building. So I have to do research into some of the projects and problems that we're serving. One year we were looking at female genital mutilation in Kenya and in the world. And so I had to do a lot of research. And what I realized is that, we have to go back to the root cause of the suffering. That is to say, if I'm a poor farmer in Kenya and someone comes to me and says, I want to marry your daughter, but only if she has this procedure, then that's what I do. And if it's traditional to my culture, my religion, that's what I do. So what do we do when these sort of, traditional rights meet modern human rights violations? That's an interesting conversation right there. But also looking at how do my choices as an American consuming products have an effect on the economies of the world that would force someone into say having to marry their daughter for a dowry, or in the instance of sex trafficking, someone comes to me and I'm a poor farmer and says, I will take your daughter to the city, we'll help her make money, we'll send money back to you, and then I would say yes to that. So that's a long way of saying we have to look at our complicity in some of these challenges. And so that's part of sacred activism. The next part is doing it in a way that's sustainable to my life, right? So I don't just give up my own health and well-being to serve others, nor do I sit around and perfect myself, or think, not do anything until I'm perfect. I just go out and through sharing power, collaborating with people, building community, then I have a more sustainable framework for visioning something new. So it's really like there's a multi-layered approach to sacred activism, and it's really at the bottom line, it's holding all life sacred. So doing what we need to do to support the sacredness of our own lives, our own communities, and then serve other lives and other communities.
Is there any specific example from your life in your transformational journey that comes up to you right now that you feel like shifted or transformed in the process of doing this work, and then you're like, oh my God, this is like an awakening for me, and now I can go out and do this work even more? Like some there may be many things, but anything that, because a lot of times people have these aha moments, but they may not realize it till like years later, till when they're listening to this kind of conversation, like, oh my God, I had this aha moment. What were some of those aha moments for you on your transformation that people could possibly connect with?
When numerous stories come to mind, for me, in terms of looking at how, my own wounds are going to be part of what draws me to serving particular communities. I've definitely been in places where there was high amounts of domestic violence and addiction, which is sort of an environment that I grew up in, and really watching my own triggers come up, noticing my tendency to blame certain populations, but then going backwards and looking at, again, the root cause of that suffering, and how so many of the coping mechanisms that people have today are just simply, they're in so much pain, so much suffering, and no access to tools for healing or support. And so it helps me to awaken my compassion for everybody, the victims, the perpetrators, all of the people involved in the conversation, in the situation. We all need healing. We all need access to tools for healing.
Yeah.
But one of my big aha moments as a musician, because I was doing this work out in the field, and doing and going to different countries, and just thinking, well, I'm doing this work, and we're building an orphanage, or we're working after the earthquake in Haiti, or we're working with organizations rescuing sex trafficking victims, whatever it is. My music's not going to have anything to do with this. Well, the first thing that happens is, we go to Uganda, and the first thing that happens is people are like, woohoo, and they come out singing. And then I was like, aha,
Ah.
right, human beings are naturally singing. So
Mm-hmm.
this is my work with Voice of Change. We're hardwired for self-expression, and
Yeah.
if we hold on to trauma, it's making us sick. So learning from other cultures, how do we bring back our birthright of self-expression? That's a big part of my work.
Yeah.
And there was one point where we were in a garbage dump in Haiti, and we had
Wow.
been asked to move a garbage dump from one place to another, and it was hot and sticky and really uncomfortable work, and the whole community that lived in this tent city was standing around watching us, and it was kind of weird, and the whole situation was awkward. And I remembered being in Uganda with these little kids at this fire, and we'd had a drum jam, a singing jam, and they were playing these plastic jugs. And I was like, aha. And
Yeah.
so I picked up a plastic jug and I started drumming on it, and they were singing, and we just started playing.
Yeah.
And then slowly the kids started coming over, and then slowly the adults came over, and we ended up having this singing jam dance party on top of the garbage dump in
My
Haiti.
gosh.
And by the
Wow.
end of the day, we had a conveyor belt of the entire community plus us moving the garbage dump together.
Wow.
So that was a big one for me, where I was like, okay, music really brings people together. It
Yeah.
really connects people. It can change everything.
Mhm.
And that's, so for me as a musician, just noticing how much music and drumming and singing and dancing is and embodiment and play is a connective tissue for
Yeah.
all humans.
As you hear about so many different organizations doing so many different philanthropic things, and you're talking about music involved with this philanthropic. Like, what would you say? Like, and you don't see those two always together. Maybe there's like some sort of a party or something like that. There's a band playing, but like, what would you say? Like, how could organizations like that are out there? How could they bring more music into that? Like, you experienced this bucket experience that you're saying, and the dance party that spontaneously happened. How, maybe not just music, maybe the arts in general or dance. Like, where's that synergy in that right there? What could people look forward to if they're not familiar with how to connect those two?
Well, I think it's going to take some more creativity, but there's a lot of people doing amazing work. There's people doing, restorative theater work, theater of the oppressed work deep in the Congo. There's Musicians
Wow.
Without Borders. There's a lot of specifically musicians coming together to learn how to serve communities. Some people I know have gone down into the rainforest to record indigenous songs and teach people how to record their own songs. I think the biggest thing is exchange and empowerment, right? So if we can have an arts exchange, we could, some friends of mine are talking about creating something that's really going to other places and having a profound cultural / artistic exchange.
Yeah.
And using the art to express and using the art to heal. So my work is just helping people understand that all of us are creative artists. And interestingly enough, Bali, the reason I went to Bali many, many years ago, and again this last time, is because Bali never had differentiation between humans and art. It wasn't a separation.
Yeah.
It was like all of us
Everyone's an artist. What's your craft?
We also are artists. And so this is my message for the world. We all have artistic inclinations. We all have creative expression.
Yeah.
We're using so much of our energy to stuff it down because we've civilized ourselves away from it.
Question about that, since we're on that. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not artistic. I don't do that." I have like close friends that are just like, "Oh, I don't do any of that art." Like, because we're having this conversation here about how everyone has this creative energy. Sometimes it's repressed or whatever we've had, maybe childhood trauma. So, what are some practices from your experience that people can do that one can realize their unique gifts? Maybe, it's like stuck there trying to come out, and like, what are some things that people can do? What are some practices?
Well, again, from my perspective, this is my work with Voice of Change.
Yeah.
Just start making sounds, like find, because most people only in our culture only sing in the shower or in the car.
Yeah, that's right.
It.
I only sing in the shower.
Or when they go out dancing, it's like dancing at a club.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is now there's more and more places where we can create. Where we can generate more creativity. So, for instance, the ecstatic dance movement, right? People are allowing themselves to move outside of someone telling them what to do. The work that I do and getting people moving and singing and letting it be part of their spiritual practice, part of their living prayer.
Yeah.
That's important. Can we create more environments like that? Can we create lots more ritual? Like, again, as a longtime ritualist, many of the rituals of our culture, especially the sort of like organized religion, is just not
Yeah.
applying to people anymore.
Yeah.
But we haven't created the new place for us to get together and
It's a different
release all
kind of
that trauma.
church. It's a different
Huh?
kind of. It's like a different kind of church. That the
Yeah.
idea of church has evolved to like the dance floor or the yoga community. It's like it's still people coming together to feel inspiration, but that it's not necessarily a church,
That's right.
or a
And it's
temple.
not just to feel inspiration, that we need to create environments where there's maybe a little more structure
Yeah.
so people can move the intense trauma that we're all experiencing. It's not, and I don't mean to say everyone's experienced trauma, but modern
Yeah.
culture is overwhelming for 99% of us,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's intense out there, especially right now because it's a critical time. We're all
Hmm.
feeling it in our bodies, whether we
Yeah.
know it or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if we can find times and places to just move that energy, cry, grieve, get angry, be with each other, be physical, express, then, also joy and love and laughter, all that stuff. It's like we just don't do it. And people
Hmm.
are literally dying because of that. Like it's so profound what happens when groups of people come together. And
Yeah.
speaking of synergy,
Yeah.
there's this thing called sympathetic resonance. It's when we move together and breathe together and particularly sing together, the vibration literally amplifies and something greater than the sum of its parts gets created.
Hmm.
That's why human beings need to come together in groups and express, because it's a profound, it's revolutionary, quite frankly.
That's amazing. I always love to ask the question about, work-life balance, especially for people like us who are moving around, doing a lot of different things. Like especially you've been doing this for a while, so this is your art and craft. Like what is some advice or some challenges or whatever you're working through or have seen that works well for you for those kinds of individuals who don't have a 9 to 5, who are looking for some inspiration? Because I remember when I first got into this, I was like, how do we do this? Like, there's no boss. I don't have a boss. Like I'm trying to like manage my own lifestyle. So like, how do you manage like family, friends, projects, like all these different things? It's a circus, as we were speaking about before. What are your some of your keys to your personal success, and then also maybe some of your struggles? And it's nice to hear that.
Yeah, I'll start with my struggles.
Okay, great.
um,
Let's get into
you
it.
know, Traveling a lot all the time is exhausting and lonely sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have community all over the place, and it's really it's lovely in so many ways, and I so appreciate having family and community in lots of different places. But it's also it can be isolating. So that's some
Mm-hmm.
of the challenge that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And energetically, what gets rewarded in our culture is uber productivity, uber fastness, uber
Now,
multitasking. Now,
now.
now, 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 now. And I'm actually I'm wanting to change that in myself,
Mm.
because I see it as a compulsive behavior pattern that's not
Yeah.
always healthy. And I want to challenge it in others, but the problem is that it's not, it's kind of a new idea, right? And even in our spiritual culture, even in our, we're in this weird place where we're in this spiritual culture, but we're still in capitalistic culture. We're still in this uber productivity, the intensity of the pace, but we're trying to do things differently. So part of needing to do things differently is to slow down
Yeah.
and deepen. And that's what's trying to find its way into my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging. The good news for me is that when I do that, I feel the dispersion of my energy actually shift, and I can
Mm-hmm.
come into a real sense of like depth and
Centeredness
and centeredness, presence,
yeah.
all that stuff that I'm seeking, like if I slow down and walk in nature. So there's some non-negotiables for me. Like I have to have a daily practice,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an intense daily practice. It's like intense movement and sound.
What's like your daily? Can you share that? Are you able to?
It's an intense physical yoga practice. I do cardiovascular exercise every
Got
day
it.
because I have Alzheimer's in my family. I do a meditation practice every day. Like it's strong.
Wow.
And the nutritional piece I'm getting better at, like nutritional support, also getting stronger. And then the last thing I would say is like making sure that I take time to connect with people who I consider my spiritual family.
Yeah.
Because I have children, I don't have a partner. That part's easy. I don't have to
Mhm.
navigate that. But there's still connections that I want to navigate and maintain. And the interesting conversation now is that, my sister just told me more than half the women in the United States are single.
Oh, yeah.
So what is going to happen now? How do we create culture,
Yeah.
community, family? What's going to happen how do we take care of each other as we're older? I had this epiphany with a dear friend of mine who also travels. We were like, if something happened to us in another part of the world, nobody would know. So we created a grid where we tell each other where we are. We're tracking each other.
You
Things
gotta
like that.
check in on Facebook. They're like, oh, she's in Bali this week.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really inspirational to hear. And you're right, like the idea of, we're just doing so much more and more and more. It just seems to be like speeding up. And I feel that at times in my life. I think I was sharing with you just the last few weeks. I personally been in Chicago, and for a while I was just like gone a lot, and now I'm home, and it's been really nice to like be home because I know what's coming ahead of me in the next few months, and just it's like re-energizing. It's like going on like almost like a vipassana, or something, like just to get like what I was gonna say is that it sounds like because you have this awareness around that oh, I need to slow down. I feel like that's like the first step that we won't even get to, because a lot of people we may not even be realizing that we're going too fast or doing too much, because that's so much of the norm that's part of our like that's our daily ritual, is to do a million things. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah. What would it be like if
that,
we said, how are you? And we said, I'm fine, and I'm practicing being in the present moment.
Yeah.
What would that be like for us to really be present with each other that deeply? Not talk about what happened what happened in the past or what we're worried about in the future. It's tough.
What's going on right now? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think like, more recently when people ask me like what's going on, like I'll take a moment to like actually share, but part of me is like, do they really want to know all this stuff, or do they just want to hear, I'm fine, I'm good, yeah, it's rocking, cool. But it's not like, things are okay, I'm having a little difficulty here. That's like really getting into like, where are you right now,
Yeah.
But so
and I do think that at the heart, part of what's lost in that hustle and the weird technological sort of Uber connectivity is that like, hi, one-on-one personal connection. I care about you. I actually do care about your struggles and your joys, both.
Mm-hmm. Actually caring. That's important. You're right. Well, what are some current projects you're working on like right now? Like, you're back in San Francisco. You probably have travel schedule ahead. What are your current projects? Where to begin?
Where to begin? Lots of teaching opportunities. I'm actually going to some international and national festivals this summer, getting ready for those. Light in a Bottle, Symbiosis, the Mind Body Festival in Istanbul, stuff like that. I'm teaching with Off the Mat. We're beginning our season of teaching our intensives. That's next week. I'm going to the Yoga Service Council. I'm working on my next album, which hopefully you'll be involved with too.
Great.
And beginning the phases of writing a book. Those are things that are in the works. And then right at this moment in time, I'm immersed in my second online Voice of Change training, which is the work of my heart and my passion. And
amazing.
It's about helping people find and embody their truth and their voice. And this is going to be like my work. I can see that this is going to be a big body of my work for the next bit of time. The one thing I wanted to say about that question that you asked me before about like entrepreneurs is one thing I would say to people who are just starting out, there may not be anyone who can show you how to do it. You might have to make it up as you go along.
Create your own path. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be daunting.
Yeah.
And it's also a great opportunity to create something that hasn't been created before. I know that's been the journey of my life. Is for a long time, all these pieces were very separate, like the music and the yoga and the ritual. And then slowly over the last 10 years, it's kind of coalesced in this very unique thing that I do. It's hard to describe.
It's like your unique voice. It's like you have all these different things. Oh, I like it's like the multi-passionate entrepreneur that like your passion started becoming this one unique passion. And I'm a strong believer and supporter of that idea, because I don't just have to be one role. Like I can like multiple things, and like it'll meld, and it's kind of like unique offering, and beautiful.
And the trick is how do you talk about it, right?
Yeah, and our relationship to it too, right? What is our relation and our relationship to it, or the passion of what we're doing? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Very cool. So what is the best way people can stay in touch with you? Share just a few whether it's Facebook or a website. Like what would you like to share with people there?
Well, from my website, suzannesterling.com, I have a newsletter that I send out once a month, which kind of brings all these pieces together.
We'll add that link
And
on the information.
sorry?
We'll add that link in the information so
Oh,
people
good.
can.
And then if people are interested in the trainings that Off the Mat does, it's offthematintotheworld.org. So those two places are good places to find me, to stay in touch with me. And also,
Okay.
I'm definitely on Facebook. Of course. Aren't we
Okay.
all?
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for being with us today. It's I know you're super busy and all over the world, traveling, doing amazing things. So it's nice to have you here. I'm sure your message is going to reach a lot of people, and I know they'll find it inspirational. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for joining another episode of Global Purpose Speaks. I'm your host, DJ Taz Rashid, and this talk series is created in partnership with Global Purpose Movement. It's a collective of change makers convening and co-creating in the globe's current shift towards a world that's working for everyone. You can join the conversation at globalpurposemovement.com, and we will see you next time. Thank you.